Hello, this is Andrew Rogers, or Lords of Gallipae Games, and Sean. I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. So,
Fallon.
okay, Sean Fallon. I do know that actually, just didn't
You're
remember.
good.
And we are here to discuss, in part, the second iteration um, of the module slash campaign setting that I am working on. But first, Sean has some big news.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm very happy that we have finally put out our first novella, our our book, Paths: A Wardrobe of Death, and it launched Monday, so I guess yesterday for them. I'm not sure. I guess this will be 2 days ago for them if they're hearing this. Um, and then yeah, it's you can get it on Amazon, you get it on Barnes and Noble, any big retailer, you should be able to find it. So
Yeah, and just as a clarification, you said we, that is we, you and other parties, not you and me.
right, yes, that's me and my wife. So sorry, me and
Yeah.
Smunchy Games, and yeah,
Yeah. So, getting on to the intended topic for tonight. Um, we had left off with the question of with so many fract not fractions factions and political parties in the campaign setting of it's going to be something to do with Eternity Empire. I still don't have a title for it, but something to do with Eternity Empire because that's what this is. Um, so with so many political factions and different rivalries, how as a GM or DM would you would you be able to keep it all straight and work with all that? And I was talking with Sean for a good bit after the last episode, and I came up with something that I think will help quite a bit, and that would be this. It is a handy dandy little chart, and I'm going to have several of them. And it shows the political ties of different parties. Main specifically the alliances and the different types of alliances. And as you can tell from the little blurb up here at the top right, it tells you which type of line means what type of alliance. So we've got the diagonal lines that show like the Lord of the Dead is controlling Oof and Birdie, or at least he thinks he is, and they are aligned, whereas Oof and Birdie are clearly controlling Gurgle and Birdie, and then these horizontal lines um, just mean there's a completely neutral alliance or completely mutual alliance. Um, I am not going to put all the enemies on there because I figure people can just if these are all the different types of alliances, people can in just figure out for themselves what the enemies are.
right.
Um,
So Flea, you didn't mention Flea.
no,
Curious
I
about
did
Flea.
not mention Flea. Flea is in a straight up mutual alliance with Oof and Birdie. He is completely controlled by the Lord of the Dead, and he controls sort of Gurgle and Birdie. And I would like to point out that there's two groups here with Birdie in them. That is because Birdie has two husbands.
Interesting.
that is a match made in somewhere. Um,
Yeah.
Birdie is a half goblin, half harpy folk.
Okay.
And she is married not only to another goblin, but to Oof, an ogre.
Do they know
And,
about each other?
huh?
Do both of her husbands know about
Yeah, it
each
is
other?
purely, both are purely political marriages.
Gotcha.
And Gurgle is a goblin that excels at politics. He's a good warrior, but his true shining comes through with politics.
Ah.
And I'll put that back up if I need to. But um, so the fun thing about writing that was such a fun story to write about. In volume 2 of the Incredible Line of the Frunkian Court, we talk about Oof and his engagement with to Birdie and some very funny times. It's a great story. I can't wait till I get to publish it. So back to this, I don't have any more political spheres drawn up, but I plan to make the next one I plan to make. They're all going to follow that format. And I'm going to make one for the Lord of the Dead, and for Flea, and for Frunk. And I think that should cover it well enough to give someone a good foothold into figuring out how this all makes sense or doesn't make sense. Because honestly, it's never going to make sense that a goblin slash harpy folk married an ogre.
Yeah, it's interesting that they both know about each other. So I'm very curious, and actually they're both kind of in. I don't know if they're in different alliances. I mean,
No,
they
they're
seem
they're both.
similar.
Yeah. Let me pull that back up. They're Oof and Birdie. Birdie is kind of the glue that holds Oof and Gurgle together.
Interesting.
Um, but Oof clearly controls Gurgle, and by and due to that, controls the Kugon and Toothsaw clans.
Ah, okay.
Um, so Oof and Gurgle are sort of. I mean, none of these people are against each other. Gurgle at one point had a duel with Oof because Oof was acting too uppity and controlling,
Mhm.
and that duel ended with Oof, I believe, holding Gurgle over a cliff, saying, "I'll drop you if you don't give in completely." And Gurgle did what he does and played the political game in order to live.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you have this one character with two husbands that know about each other. It makes you wonder, like, if emotions fly, or
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how that works.
And Oof did not want to marry Birdie.
Oh, I see. So this was like a forced thing for him.
Yeah, this was the Lord of the Dead said, "You need allies and not just undead ones. I have my own uses for my undead allies." That's why he didn't want to completely give Oof only undead allies. He has his own purposes and uses for them. So he's like, you need allies that are living, and the most easily controlled allies are going to be kobolds and goblins because you can scare them into following you.
Right.
So he's like, I've had my eye on Gurgle for quite some time because he's amassing quite a large army of goblins and kobolds and hobgoblins. I actually have one clan that is missing from this that I just realized, I believe. If I can, there's a goblin, there's a kobold clan in here somewhere. That is missing from that, and I'm not going to look for it now, but I'll put it in there later. Anyway, so yeah, he's like, go find a way to get Gurgle under your control. And Gurgle was like, hey, I know, marry Birdie. Oof is like, I'm not marrying no harpy folk. I I know ugly. That's ugly.
So, so is Gurgle, was he for this then? I mean, like, is he the one who really truly loves her? Is
He
that how that works?
no nobody loves her.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. One of those things.
But it was a political marriage for Gurgle too, and it was everything's all about politics with him. So he decided that it would be best for everyone if Oof married Birdie as well.
Huh. Okay.
And
Wow.
Oof got drunk enough to where he thought it was a good idea.
Okay, I see. Interesting. All right.
So
So this plays into your campaign, or the you were talking about the game masterpiece.
yes. So
Uh,
this is just to. Oh, you had a question. Sorry.
I do. So in this situation, I mean, if you've chosen this faction as a game master, I mean, are as you mentioned, they're gonna have to keep track.
I'm sorry. I think part of your question cut off.
I think, yeah, I think it did. Sorry. When so the game master, they're gonna have to keep track of all this. So uh, when they're looking at this, and I imagine there are other alliances, right? That they'll
Hmm.
have to look through. But you were originally, because I wanted to go back to what you were talking about on how um, this is the alliances, but also how the game master would really be able to control that. Because I think at the end of the last video, you were talking about that players may have to choose the faction that they're playing in. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
So I would say the first step is for players to choose what type of character they want. Based on that, to me, it's a player. To me, as a player, because I love being a player too, I'm not socially acceptable as a player. I tend to get very controlling and panicky. So I don't play with many people. But I love being a player. So to me, as a player, it's all about your character and the role playing and a little bit about the power and the items. The loot and the power is good, but it's the role playing and the character themselves. So, first, everyone would have to decide what type of character they want. And then, based on the backstory of each race, because I'm going to give each race a backstory within the area, like what they're good, what they're commonly found doing, where their place in the empire is, where their place in the territory is. going to give that to every race that I have available for the campaign setting. And
Okay.
then based on that and whatever the players slash the GM, what the players want to manipulate that to be, and the GM will allow. Like, I've had players all the time that say, "Well, I don't like that backstory. Can I change it? Can I change this aspect of it?" And it's up to the GM to say, "Yes, you can," or you know, "You really need to stick to such and such." But so the players pick what type of character they want to be. That determines what faction they're going to be in. And then based on the charts that I'm going to draw up and the history that I'm going to write up of each area, because I have a brief history and description of each area in this map here, like the Forest of Stolen Mortality. Um, what else is a good one? Oh, the Great Plains of Denial are where the halflings mostly come from. Other places like that, there
Okay.
is a history behind that, and it just go from there.
Right. So these would be your two strong starting points. Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
no, I mean those are strong start. The strongest starting points would be from the Great Plains of Denial, Forlorn Village, even though it's kind of wrecked, but it's still a power in and of itself. Lockjaw Mountain, the where's the Gurgle Clan main fortress, Oof's fortress. I would say Flea's headquarters. Any of those areas would be great starting points as far as like geographical starting points and alliances for the, or even Duskdun City
Okay. So
if
would
you're
these be
starting with
marked
the
out?
Lure of the Dead.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, so are these going to be marked out for the game masters? Like, I guess maybe not marked out, but like recommendations. Granted, I guess they can do whatever they want, but
Yeah, these
um,
are there's going to be recommendations, and there's going to be um, extensive backstories.
gotcha. Well, that's cool.
The charts are just there to get a political, just get your hands on, just get a visual of the politics in the area. See who, a clear visual of who is fighting who and who is controlling who.
Right. So the forest here of
Hold on.
yeah, I can't. Sorry. I it's up there. It is stolen mortality. Um, so when I myself game master anyway, I love to describe like the setting and really get into that. Like so for this example, I know that's not a starting point, but when you do get to a place like that, are you going to give like this awesome description that the game master can riff on
Yes.
for like the forest of mortality? Because that would be to me that would be an awesome place to like travel to and do some kind of quest or something.
Yes, I'm currently working on those descriptions of literally every label in here. Um and for the Forest of Stolen Mortality in particular, there's a bunch of different environmental factors that I am working on, because it is a highly magical forest in a very bad way. It is not
Mm.
natural. It is not good. It is very evil, and it is controlled entirely by the Lord of the Dead and by Aruth the Dark, the one of the four devils, I think. Um, Aruth the Dark being the Lord of Dark Magic. And I may be wrong about the devil that controls it. I know there's the Lord of the Dead gifted a territory to each of the devils that he controls.
Hmm.
So I believe the Forest of Stolen Mortality and the Forest of Dark Magic are gifted to Aruth the Dark, but I'm not sure. But there's a bunch of environmental effects, like you can see this, but they can't, so I'm going to list a couple. There's death rain, there's flame twisters, there's hallucination storms, there's hex storms, mind storms, there's soul storms, there's teleportation sand, transmutation storms, all of these things that could be coming in at any point in the adventure, whether it be traveling or combat or anything that could just start randomly affecting the characters, make the Forest of Stolen Mortality in particular a very, very dangerous forest. Because let's just take the teleportation sand, for instance. That's mostly off the off the path, not off the bath. Um, that's mostly off the path. But if you do happen to go off the path, which would be foolish, um, you could step in this teleportation sand, and then all of a sudden you're teleported X miles away from the rest of the party. And if the party followed suit because they're trying to catch you, it's a random direction that you're teleported. So you could all be teleported to a different area. Which is why this goes into legendary level adventuring.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then. Um, so I had another question. It's a little off topic, so forgive me, but I'm curious. Um, when you're naming these, like Forest of Stolen Morality or Mortality, sorry, Burning Water Lake, River of Denial, where did these names come from? Like, is this something that has happened in the world? Is this something that the NPCs have experienced, or like where did those names come from?
Some of are you asking about my methods of naming, or are you asking about in world?
I'm asking about both, but you
Okay,
can choose whichever one to speak.
my method of naming, with this particular type of thing, is I look at what I have and what I know about the area, and then I try to think of something that would sound cool but would fit. Um, and then there's the in-game explanation. Like, we'll take Old Man's River for example. Um, that was named for an ancient king of before the Lord of the Dead's time, who was who could not get a son. He was a king without a male heir, and this was bugging him, and he went to the river, which was a perfectly normal river as far as anybody knew, and he heard this woman singing, and she lured him to the water, where she promised that if he gave his soul to her master, that she would grant him a male heir, something like that. And he happily agreed. Oh, and she said something about I don't know if there was something about immortality because he lived for a very, very long time and he went back to the river after outliving his male heir and pleaded with her to kill him and finally take him, and she drew him into the water and drowned him. And I will not
Oh,
spoil who she actually was because that's a big spoiler for the game.
gotcha. Okay. So I mean, so if I was a character, and I was playing in this world, would I know like so Village of the Lost One? Would I know to call it that? Like,
Yes.
if I were to pull up a map? Oh, okay. So these are things that are commonly known names, and
Yes.
um,
Um,
okay,
the only one that the only ones you might not know, the Baba Yaga's lair, you wouldn't know where that is. Um, until late in the campaign, and I think this will be our last question because of time, but and then there's the lair of the fallen lord. You would just know as like that old wrecked keep or something like that.
okay. So if I were to open a map, like I wouldn't see that.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that. That's not something most people know about because it's something from the Forgotten World, which is as the name suggests, forgotten.
Ah, okay, that's cool. Awesome.
So I think for now, we will wrap this up. Do you have any other questions that you were going to ask me? Are we going to work on this one more video?
I think so. I think we need to probably for the next one would be great to know more about some of these other places here, but also talking more about game master reference and really maybe more so what the game master would expect in the book, but also specific recommendations and even the other alliances if they exist.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will go ahead and end the discussion for tonight. I'll, y'all have a good night and good gaming.
Good night.